We're just days away from reaching 1,000 subscribers. If we hit this goal in the next 15 days, we'll be able to keep the channel running and continue bringing you these stories. Your subscription makes all the difference. It's quick and helps us enormously. The Peasant Redeemed. Chapter 1. The Peasant Redeemed. The Auction. The autumn of 1847 had been particularly cruel to the farmers of the Montclair Valley. Torrential rains had destroyed half the harvest, and debts were mounting among the small landowners who could no longer pay their rents to the local lord, Baron Aldrich de Malmont, a man without mercy known for his greed and cruelty toward his tenants. On this freezing October morning, the village market square teemed with an unusual crowd. This was not an ordinary market day, but a day of forced auctions. The Baron, accompanied by his steward and men-at-arms, had come to demand his due from indebted families, seizing livestock, furniture, and sometimes even the people themselves, to sell them as servants in order to repay debts. At the center of this desolate scene stood Marguerite Beaumont, a 22-year-old woman with braided chestnut hair and green eyes filled with fierce dignity despite the humiliation she was enduring. The daughter of farmers who had died of fever the previous winter, she found herself alone, responsible for a debt of £150 that she could not honor. Her farm had been seized, her animals sold, and now, according to the feudal laws still in force in this remote region, she herself had to be sold as a servant to pay off the balance. "Here, then, is Marguerite Beaumont," cried the Baron's herald, pushing her onto the rough wooden platform erected in the center of the square. A young woman of good constitution, able to read and write, skilled in domestic and agricultural work, starting price £50 for a 10-year servitude contract. Marguerite clenched her fists, refusing to cry before this assembly composed partly of her former neighbors who dared not protest for fear of suffering the same fate. She had donned her finest dress, a simple blue wool garment that her mother had sewn for her, determined to maintain her dignity even in this ordeal. £50, cried a pot-bellied merchant from the neighboring village. I need a cook for my inn. 60, bid a prosperous farmer. My wife needs help taking care of our 8 children. Marguerite closed her eyes, feeling her heart break. She who had grown up free on her lands, who loved running through the fields and caring for animals, was about to become the slave of one of these men for an entire decade. At 32, when her servitude ended, she would be a spinster without family and without future. £70, cried a hoarse voice that made Marguerite shudder with horror. It was Bertrand Roussel, owner of an isolated farm in the hills, known for his brutality toward his servants. His first servant had died under suspicious circumstances, and the second had fled in the middle of the night the previous year. Everyone knew that being sold to Roussel was equivalent to a death sentence. £70 for Roussel, repeated the herald. Is there another bid? A heavy silence fell over the square. No one dared bid against Roussel, who was feared by all for his violence and shady connections with brigands from the area. £70 going once, £70 going twice. Marguerite opened her eyes and saw Roussel's cruel smile, already certain of his victory. In a few seconds, she would belong to this man who would treat her worse than a beast of burden. It was then that the sound of hooves echoed on the square's cobblestones. A black carriage bearing ducal arms stopped at the edge of the crowd, and a man of tall stature descended from it. It was Gabriel de Montclair, Duke of Ravenshollow, feudal lord of the entire region, whose lands extended far beyond those of Baron de Malmont. At 35, Duke Gabriel was an imposing man with black hair and piercing blue eyes. Unlike most nobles of his time, he was known for his justice and kindness toward his farmers. Widowed for 2 years, he had devoted his life to improving the living conditions of his subjects and was as respected as he was loved throughout the duchy. His unexpected presence in the marketplace created a stir in the crowd. Baron de Malmont paled, aware that his overlord did not approve of these human auctions, though they were legally authorized. "My Lord Duke," stammered the Baron, bowing awkwardly, "what an honor to see you here. I didn't know that your Grace was interested in our small commercial affairs." Gabriel surveyed the scene. The platform, the young woman standing in her blue dress, the greedy bidders, and especially Roussel, who was impatiently awaiting the conclusion of the sale. His face hardened. "Baron," he said in an icy voice, "I was unaware that you still practice the sale of human beings on my lands. My lord, it's perfectly legal. This woman owes £150, and according to ancient seigneurial rights—" "I know the laws," Gabriel interrupted sharply, "but I would like to understand how a debt of this magnitude could have accumulated on a simple farm." The Baron reddened, understanding that the Duke suspected his usurious methods. "Times are hard, my lord. The harvests have been poor, and you have no doubt lent money at particularly generous rates," Gabriel completed ironically. He mounted the platform and approached Marguerite, who looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear. Up close, he could see the traces of tears on her cheeks, but also the pride that still illuminated her green gaze. "What is your name?" he asked her gently. "Marguerite Beaumont, my lord," she replied with a trembling voice. "Tell me about this debt, Miss Beaumont." "My father borrowed £20 from the Baron last year to buy seeds after the hail. With interest and penalties, the sum became £150. Gabriel turned toward the Baron with a terrible look. £20 transformed into 150? What were the interest rates then? "The rates! The usual rates, my lord." "Usurious rates, rather. Baron de Malmont, you dishonor your name and your rank with these practices." He descended from the platform and addressed the herald. "Where do the bids stand?" £70, my lord, offered by Bertrand Roussel." Gabriel looked at Roussel, whose sinister reputation had reached his ears. The idea that this innocent young woman might fall into the hands of this brute revolted him. £100, he said calmly. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Duke was bidding himself. Roussel, red with anger, cried, £110! This girl belongs to me!" £150, Gabriel immediately replied. Silence fell over the square. £150 was exactly the amount of the debt, which meant the sale would entirely cover the Baron's claim. £150? stammered the herald. "Is there a higher bid?" Roussel clenched his fists, but he didn't have the means to follow. No other bidder dared challenge the Duke. £150 going once, £150 going twice, sold. Marguerite looked at Gabriel with wide eyes. She had just been bought by the Duke himself. What did this mean for her future? Gabriel mounted the platform again and addressed her in a voice that only she could hear. "Miss Beaumont, I have just bought your freedom. But if you wish, I offer you honest employment in my house, with a decent wage and the respect due to every person." "It is I who will buy you back," he said louder, so all could hear. "And from this day forward, you are free." These words resonated across the square like a revolution. A lord who bought a servant to immediately give her back her freedom? This was unheard of. Chapter 2. A New Life at the Castle. The journey to Ravenshollow Castle took place in respectful silence. Marguerite, still in shock from the morning's events, sat facing the Duke in his carriage, not daring to raise her eyes to the man who had just transformed her destiny. Gabriel, for his part, discreetly observed this young woman, whose dignity in trial had deeply touched him. "Miss Beaumont," he finally said, "I would like you to clearly understand your situation. I bought you back to free you, not to enslave you. You are perfectly free to leave if you wish." Marguerite finally raised her head and looked him in the eyes. "My lord, I don't know how to thank you, but where would I go? I have nothing left, no family, no home." "That is exactly why I offer you employment in my house. My housekeeper, Mrs. de Vernay, is aging and needs a competent assistant. Does the position interest you?" "Oh, yes, my lord. I know how to keep house. I can read and write, and I will work with all my strength to prove my gratitude." "Your gratitude I already have. What I wish now is our mutual respect and your adaptation to a new life." When they arrived at Ravenshollow Castle, Marguerite was dazzled by the magnificence of the residence. The grey stone towers soared toward the autumn sky, surrounded by impeccably maintained gardens, where the season's last roses still perfumed the cool air. Mrs. de Vernay, the housekeeper, was a 60-year-old woman with silver hair and a benevolent gaze. She welcomed Marguerite with maternal kindness that brought tears to the young woman's eyes. "My child," she said, embracing her, "His Grace sent me a message explaining your situation. Welcome to our house. We will take care of you." Marguerite was installed in a comfortable room in the senior servants' quarters, with a window overlooking the gardens and a small writing desk where she could write. Compared to the hovel, where she had spent her last months after the seizure of her farm, it was a veritable palace. The following days were a revelation for Marguerite. Mrs. de Vernay taught her the protocols of the great house, the etiquette to respect with distinguished guests, and the management of domestic accounts. Marguerite proved to be an exceptional student, quickly assimilating everything she was taught and showing natural intelligence that impressed all those who worked with her. Duke Gabriel discreetly observed her progress. He had taken to passing through the kitchens and common areas to inquire about his servants' welfare, and he noticed that Marguerite brought new efficiency to the castle's daily management. But what struck him most was her kindness toward everyone, from valets to gardeners, treating each with the same respect. One evening, as he was walking through the library, he found her absorbed in reading a volume of French poetry by candlelight. "Forgive me, my lord," she said, standing up hastily. "I didn't know you came here in the evening. Mrs. de Vernay had told me I could borrow books." "You may, of course," said Gabriel with a smile. "What are you reading?" "Lamartine, my lord, the Poetic Meditations. My mother had introduced them to me when I was little." "Your mother was cultured?" "She had been a schoolteacher before her marriage. She taught me to read, write, and also to love beautiful things." Gabriel approached and took the book to read the passage she had marked. It was "The Lake," one of his favorite poems. "O time, suspend thy flight, and you, propitious hours, suspend your course," he recited from memory. "An exquisite choice, Miss Marguerite." "You know Lamartine, my lord?" "Intimately. I had the honor of meeting him in Paris a few years ago. But tell me, what do you love about this poem?" Marguerite blushed, unaccustomed to being asked her opinion on such subjects. The idea that life's most beautiful moments are so fragile, so brief, and that we would want to hold them for eternity. This response, of touching sensitivity, moved Gabriel more than he would have thought possible. "It's a very accurate interpretation, and very personal." "My lord, may I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Why did you save me? I mean, really. You didn't know me, and £150 is a lot of money for a stranger." Gabriel reflected a moment before answering. "Because what was happening to you was unjust, and because I saw in your eyes something I had lost for a long time." "What, my lord?" "Hope. Despite your desperate situation, you had not given up. That touched me." They remained silent for a moment, each lost in thought. Marguerite barely dared believe that this great lord was speaking to her with such simplicity and sincerity. "My lord," she finally said, "if you permit me this liberty. You said you had lost hope." Because of the death of the Duchess? Gabriel nodded sadly. Elizabeth was my whole life. When she died, I felt like part of myself disappeared with her. My mother always said that loved ones only truly die when we stop loving them. As long as we keep their memory alive in our hearts, they continue to watch over us. These words, simple but profound, touched Gabriel in his most intimate being. This young woman who had lost everything still found words of consolation for others. "Your mother was a wise woman," he said softly. "She also said that we should never be ashamed to begin living again, that it's even our duty to those who can no longer do so." Gabriel looked at her with new attention. In a few weeks, this redeemed peasant had become one of the most precious people in his house, not only for her efficiency, but for her kindness and natural wisdom. "Marguerite," he said, using her first name for the first time, "thank you for these words and for what you bring to this house. It is I who thank you, my lord. You have given me a new life, and you have reminded me that life is still worth living." Chapter 3. The Blossoming of a Feeling. Winter settled over the lands of Ravenshollow, transforming the castle into a haven of warmth and light in the countryside, sleeping under snow. Marguerite had found her place in her new function and had become indispensable to the smooth running of the house. Her competence and delicacy had quickly made her Mrs. de Vernay's confidante, and even the oldest servants respected her for her kindness and fairness. But it was, especially with Duke Gabriel, that a particular relationship had formed. Their meetings in the library had become daily. They discussed literature, philosophy, and sometimes more personal subjects. Gabriel discovered in Marguerite a keen intelligence and sensitivity that equaled those of the most cultured ladies he had known, while keeping that simplicity and authenticity that were uniquely hers. One December evening, as a snowstorm raged outside, Gabriel found Marguerite in the library, but this time she wasn't reading. She sat near the fireplace, her eyes lost in the flames, looking melancholy. "You seem sad tonight," he observed, settling into the neighboring armchair. "Forgive me, my lord. I was thinking of my parents. Winter was their favorite season. They always organized a little party for the solstice with the neighbors." "Do you regret your former life?" "No," she said quickly. "Oh, no, my lord, don't think that. My life here is 1,000 times better than anything I could have hoped for. It's just that sometimes memories resurface." "I understand," Gabriel said softly. "I, too, some evenings think back to Elizabeth and the Christmases we celebrated together." They remained silent for a moment, each lost in memories. Then Marguerite had an inspiration. "My lord, if I'm not too bold, why not organize a party for the servants? Nothing extraordinary, just a slightly special meal and some Christmas carols. It would lift everyone's spirits." Gabriel looked at her with surprise. "Do you really think it would bring pleasure?" "Oh, yes. I know everyone respects and loves you, but sometimes people need to feel they're part of a real family, not just a household." This idea touched Gabriel deeply. Since Elizabeth's death, he had locked himself in his pain, neglecting the human aspect of his responsibilities. "You're right," he finally said. "Organize this party then, and I will participate." Marguerite's eyes lit up. "Really? Oh, my lord, how happy everyone will be." The preparations for the Christmas party transformed the castle's atmosphere. Marguerite coordinated everything with enthusiasm that spread to everyone. They decorated the great servants' hall, prepared a feast, and rehearsed traditional songs. Gabriel, for his part, brought musicians from the village and ordered gifts for all his servants. On Christmas evening, the great hall resounded with laughter and songs. Gabriel, seated at the common table with his people, rediscovered a joy he had thought lost. He watched Marguerite move between the tables, ensuring everyone had everything they needed, and he realized it was she who had made all this possible. When gift time came, Gabriel personally gave each servant a chosen present. When he reached Marguerite, he handed her a small velvet case. "My lord," she murmured, "you shouldn't have." "Open it," he said with a smile. Inside was a finely chased gold locket, containing a miniature portrait of her parents that he had commissioned based on her description. Marguerite brought her hands to her mouth, tears in her eyes. "How did you? It's wonderful. I recognize them perfectly." "Thus you will never lose them," Gabriel said softly. "My lord." "Gabriel," she said, using his first name for the first time. "Thank you for everything. You have given me back my dignity. You have given me a family, and now this." "Marguerite," he said, taking her hands in his, "it is you who have given me everything. You have given me back the joy of living." Around them the servants continued to feast, but they saw only their gazes meeting. In Gabriel's eyes, Marguerite read something that made her heart beat faster. In Marguerite's, Gabriel found a tenderness and understanding that healed his wounds. "Marguerite," he murmured, "I—" But he stopped, suddenly realizing where his feelings were leading him. How could a duke declare his love to a former peasant, even a free one? The social gap was immense, and the strict conventions of their time made such a union almost impossible. Marguerite, who had read in his eyes, lowered her head sadly. She too had become aware of what was growing between them, and she knew the insurmountable obstacles that stood in their path. "I know," she said simply. "I know it's impossible." "It's not that I don't want it," he said with passion, "but society, my position, my rank." "I understand, Gabriel, and I don't resent you for it." They looked at each other for a long time, each understanding that the other shared their feelings, but also knowing that the conventions of their time separated them inexorably. Love had been born between the duke and the redeemed peasant, but could it triumph over the social barriers that separated them? Chapter 4. Triumphant Love. The weeks following Christmas were painful for Gabriel and Marguerite. Conscious of their mutual feelings but prisoners of social conventions, they tried to maintain their relations on a purely professional level. Their meetings in the library became rarer and more formal, each striving to hide the love growing in their heart. Gabriel threw himself into duchy affairs with new ardor, as if to flee his emotions. Marguerite, for her part, accomplished her tasks with perfect efficiency, but had lost the joyful spontaneity that had characterized her since her arrival at the castle. The test of truth came from an unexpected source. Baron de Malmont, humiliated by the Duke's intervention during the auction, had schemed his revenge. He spread rumors that Marguerite had become the Duke's mistress, hoping to tarnish his overlord's reputation and compromise the young woman. These rumors reached the ears of Lady Pemberton, Gabriel's elder sister, a haughty and conventional woman who had never approved of her brother's kindness toward his inferiors. She arrived one morning at the castle, accompanied by her husband and their daughter, Lady Celeste, a 25-year-old woman she intended for her brother's fortunate widowhood. "Gabriel," she said in an unyielding tone, bursting into his study, "we need to talk immediately, and in private." Gabriel sighed, guessing the object of this impromptu visit. "My dear Constance, hello to you too. How are you all? Don't be witty with me. The most scandalous rumors are circulating about you. They say you're having an affair with one of your servants, a former peasant you supposedly bought at auction. And what makes you think these rumors deserve our attention? Gabriel, you are a duke. You have responsibilities to your lineage, to your name. You cannot compromise yourself with just anyone. Marguerite Beaumont is not just anyone. She is a remarkable woman whom I had the honor to rescue, and who now serves in my house with distinction. You see, you call her by her first name, and that tone when you speak of her. Gabriel, tell me these rumors are false." Gabriel looked at his sister for a long time before answering. "No, Constance, I cannot tell you that." Lady Pemberton paled. "You mean that you have feelings for this servant?" "I have feelings for an exceptional woman who possesses more natural nobility than half our society. Gabriel, you've lost your reason. Think of your rank. Think of Elizabeth. She would turn over in her grave." This last remark made Gabriel leap up. "Don't involve Elizabeth in this. She was generous enough to understand that love knows no social boundaries." "Love? You speak of love? For a peasant?" "Yes, Constance, I am in love with Marguerite, and if she will have me, I intend to marry her." Lord Pemberton's cry echoed in the corridor, followed by the sound of a fall. Gabriel rushed outside and found Marguerite kneeling beside the old man who had collapsed. "He fainted," she said calmly. "He must be carried to a chair and given smelling salts." With Gabriel's help, she transported Lord Pemberton to the salon and tended to him with a competence that impressed even Lady Pemberton. In a few minutes, the old man regained consciousness. "Thank you," he told her weakly. "You treated me with great delicacy." "It's natural, my lord," Marguerite replied simply. Lady Pemberton observed the scene with a mixture of surprise and annoyance. She had expected to find an unscrupulous adventuress, and she discovered a distinguished young woman who cared for her husband with as much attention as she would have done herself. "Marguerite," Gabriel said when Lord Pemberton was recovered, "my sister and brother-in-law wish to speak with you." "My lord," Marguerite said, paling, "if I have done something wrong—" "You have done nothing wrong," Gabriel interrupted, "but it seems our mutual affection has become a subject of conversation." Marguerite looked at Lady Pemberton with dignity. "Countess, if my feelings for His Grace disturb you, I can leave the castle today." "Your feelings," repeated Lady Pemberton, surprised by this frankness. "Yes, madam. I love Duke Gabriel, not for his rank or fortune, but for the good and generous man he is. But I know our condition makes this love impossible." "Impossible," Gabriel said, approaching her. "Who said it was impossible?" "Gabriel, come now," protested his sister. "You cannot marry a servant." "I can marry whomever I want," Gabriel replied firmly. "And if Marguerite accepts, we will marry." He took the young woman's hands in his. "Marguerite, I bought you back to give you your freedom. Today, I ask you to give me mine by becoming my wife. Will you marry me?" Marguerite looked at him through her tears. "Gabriel, are you certain? A duke and a peasant." "A man and a woman who love each other," he corrected. "The rest doesn't matter." "Then yes," she said breathlessly. "Yes, I want to be your wife." Gabriel took her in his arms under the stupefied gazes of his family. "Constance," he said to his sister, "you can approve this union or disapprove of it. It won't change my decision. But I hope you will learn to know Marguerite and discover why I love her." 6 months later, Gabriel de Montclair, Duke of Ravenshollow, married Marguerite Beaumont in the castle chapel. Contrary to Lady Pemberton's pessimistic predictions, local aristocratic society welcomed this union with benevolence, touched by the romantic story of the peasant redeemed by love. Marguerite, having become a duchess, proved through her grace and kindness that she was worthy of her new rank. She opened a school for farmers' children, created a dispensary for the poor, and became the guardian angel of all the disinherited in the duchy. "Do you know," she said one evening to Gabriel as they walked in their garden, "that if Baron de Malmont had not been so greedy, we would never have met?" "Destiny always finds its way," Gabriel replied, holding her close. "I was destined to redeem you, and you were destined to redeem my heart. And in the duchy's villages, they still told for a long time the story of the peasant sold at auction, and the duke who redeemed her for love, proving that sometimes the most beautiful fairy tales are born from the most desperate situations.